Here on the roundtable with George Will, Karen Tumulty of Time Magazine, Jerry Seib of the Wall Street Journal, and Katrina vanden Heuvel of The Nation. And one thing you can say for certain, George Will, is that Sarah Palin beat expectations.
She did, which is the advantage of starting with a low base. She had, in the 2 weeks preceding this, suffered a lot of wounds, some of them self-inflicted. I think she cauterized those wounds in the sense that she enables people who want to stay with her to stay with her. The question is, did a significant number of those 70 million viewers say, yes, that's a president after all? I mean, when she said, it's time that we represent Joe Sixpack in the vice presidency, some people may have said, well, represent him but not replicate him. And that's a difference.
Yeah, I think a lot of those 70 million viewers were tuning in for the same reason people watch auto racing. They thought there might be a big crash with a big fireball at the end of it. But I do think that both of these candidates were playing not to lose. They were not playing to win. So I think that as a result, the race really didn't change much, although, you know, both of them, I think, acquitted themselves quite well.
But a race that doesn't change, Jerry Seib, at this point helps Barack Obama. And it did seem like Senator Biden had one clear strategy there. Focus on John McCain, forget about Sarah Palin, and time to George Bush.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little aftermath analysis of Joe Biden's performance, which was actually pretty good. He avoided the trap of beating up on a woman. You know, that was what everybody was worried about. If you expected him to lapse into these verbal excesses and rhetorical flourishes for which he's become known, famous or infamous, he didn't do that either. He was pretty disciplined and pretty straightforward, didn't try to play on Sarah Palin's turf.
You talk about avoiding the trap of beating up on a woman. His campaign team was most proud of this moment where twice Sarah Palin talks about General McClellan in Afghanistan. It's General David McKiernan. You could see on Biden's face, he knew exactly who it was, but he wasn't going to correct her.
He didn't do it. Exactly.
He didn't go there.
Exactly.
You know, there's so much at stake in this election. I have a hard time doing the post-debate plays because I think the debate exposed a number of things. She's trying to channel Ronald Reagan, but this isn't Morning in America time in America. Two, I thought Joe Biden was forceful, disciplined, gracious, and showed he had a higher emotional IQ. She was tone deaf when he choked up. But the larger point is I think McCain was the loser because in picking Sarah Palin, what was clear, as someone who used to be on this program said, Fareed Zakaria, bipartisan commentator, McCain has exposed how cynical this choice was. And it shatters, or it should shatter forever, the myth of John McCain as a seasoned, experienced candidate who puts country above politics.
And for 2 weeks, it was clear, that, as George, you suggested, that Sarah Palin had become a drag. The question is, if she cauterized those wounds, how do they go forward after this? But to pick up on Katrina's broader point, coming out of a 3-week financial crisis where the country was focused on the economy, he is now facing tremendous headwinds in the economy.
I was at Wrigley Field on Thursday night watching the Cubs embarrass themselves, and as the embarrassment deepened, the fans began to chant, "Bail out the Cubs." It's now part of the American lexicon. California is now the first of 49 other states to get in line to get temporary aid. The country does have a feeling of crisis, and the Obama campaign is about to benefit from a huge mass mailing it has nothing to do with. In coming days, 401k and pension funds are going to send to Americans their third quarter results.
Everyone's been too afraid to look.
They're going to open the envelope like that, and it's not going to be helpful to John McCain.
Not only that, Jerry Seib, but I thought watching the stock market on Friday was fascinating. All morning long, as they thought the rescue plan, bailout plan was going to pass, you see it climbing up 200 points or so. But once it passes, on the heels of these new job numbers showing 159,000 jobs lost, you see it start to tank one more time. People focused on the economy, not just the financial crisis.
Well, two things they focused on. Well, first of all, the market had, I think, priced in this package passing the House, which it did. So there wasn't much bump on the upside there. 159,000 job loss in September. That's before the effects of this credit crunch that we've really been living through for 2 weeks have really taken hold in the real economy. And second, and increasingly, a lot of concern about what's going on in Europe. Europe is just behind the U.S. Their banks, their mortgage companies are in the same cycle, just a little bit slower in this cycle. So I think what you saw on Friday was the market take this news, absorb it, accept it, but then move on to the next set of worries, which are just behind.
And Karen, Jerry brings up the fact that we probably haven't seen the worst of the job losses yet. Already 760,000 jobs lost this year. I went back to some of the other close elections. People forget, in 1992, the economy was creating jobs when it was the economy. In 1980, By the time Ronald Reagan was rallying on Jimmy Carter, again, the economy was creating jobs. In this situation, it's getting worse. It's going in the other direction.
And we are now finally, in this last month before the election, able to look at how what the campaigns are actually doing, walking the walk rather than talking the talk. And the same day as the debate, John McCain essentially pulled out of Michigan, which is ground zero for this bad economy. McCain has never really developed an economic message. All he's talked about is tax cuts and earmarks. And I think in a week where you vote for a $700 billion bailout package, especially the earmarks message just doesn't take you anywhere.
Yeah. This administration has the worst job creation record of since 1945. The bailout. The credit crunch had to be stopped. It didn't have to be stopped on the back of ordinary working people. It was a swindle, and we are seeing right after this bailout passes what's going on in the real economy.
A swindle backed by an awful lot of Democrats, a majority of the majority.
A swindle. But Barack Obama now has the possibility, with support from progressives, and he's spoken to this, to address the glaring inequities of this bill. And one is about keeping people in their homes, restructuring mortgages. The other is regulation. We are at a moment, and I don't think George will agree, but let us all agree that market fundamentalism, that the market can do no wrong, that is as bankrupt as some of these firms on Wall Street, and what the next recovery frame for this country will be in the role of government as a force for public good is the fight ahead of us. Barack Obama speaks to that. John McCain has no message, and I think people are suffering in this country and are more open to a smart, effective government.
It is hard to state the truth with more elegant imprecision. In fact, much of the crisis we're in today is because the government set out to fiddle the market. That is, we had regulation in effect with legislation that would criminalize as racism and discrimination if you didn't lend to non-productive borrowers. We had Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac existed to rig the housing market because the market would not have put people in homes they could not have afforded.
Let's take a look at what it has done to the presidential race, because we have seen a serious move here. On the national polls over the last week, let's see what we have here. Barack Obama, all 4 major national polls this week showing Obama ahead, average of about 5 or 6 points. And then when you look beneath that at the electoral map, we've put up the 2004 results, but look at the states now that were won by George W. Bush in 2004, but right now, these are states where John McCain is either behind or at best tied. 10 different states there, Jerry Seib, where John McCain is playing defense, as Karen Tumulty pointed out. He pulled out of Michigan this week.
Well, I think what they did was they swapped Michigan for Pennsylvania. What John McCain needs to do is he needs to win one of those blue states and turn that one red to offset some of those states
like
you just showed there.
Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Wisconsin,
those are the
New
three.
Hampshire, yeah.
Well, I think those are the 3 big ones. You've got Pennsylvania, you've got Wisconsin, you've got New Hampshire, but I think Pennsylvania, they considered their best shot at turning a blue state red, which they're going to have to do because some of those blue states you just showed are going to be blue states on election night. So I thought all year long, and Karl Rove thought this too, that Michigan was his best chance to do that, to build a cushion so that he could absorb losses of states that George Bush won.
You had a relatively unpopular governor, a terribly unpopular mayor of Detroit, yet it doesn't seem to have mattered given the economy.
No, given the economy, it did matter for a while, and all those things outweighed the economy. In fact, the Democratic governor was being blamed for the economy in Michigan to some extent. That seems to have turned around in the last 2 weeks, and that's why I think it changed.
In Florida, the Obama campaign has a budget of $39 million. They have more than 50 offices open and more than 350 people on the payroll. Now that is, they clearly think they can, and judging by the polls, they're right, carry Florida.
And one of the other things you've seen, Karen, is that in all of these states, and it's kind of stunning where Barack Obama is this weekend. He's going to campaign in Indiana, North Carolina, and Virginia. Those are 3 solidly red states. But in these states that George is talking about, Pennsylvania and Florida, the Democrats have also built up a huge registration.
That's right. That's right. And the number of new registrations is breaking all kinds of records, and they're overwhelmingly Democratic. But I must say, a couple of months ago, when the Obama campaign was talking about Indiana being in play, that was just really very difficult to take seriously. But if in fact, you know, it is in play, we're talking potentially, if things say, I mean, this is you know, Ronald Reagan, Walter Mondale landslide territory.
This is a potential